Utopia and utopias. So we'll be continuing our very fruitful discussions on More's utopia and also on its political and social implications, I believe. But the two papers will lead us into an entirely different historical and geographical context, and that is mid-17th century Spain and France. And since they're both concerned with 17th century translations and adaptations of Utopia, I suggest that we continue with the same format. I think there might rise very interesting points of comparison, so we'll hear both papers in turn and then we'll have a common discussion on them. And I'll introduce each speaker separately before each paper. Terence Cave's invaluable collection of paratexts and contexts for the many versions of Utopia that were produced around early modern Europe has made us appreciate much more, I think, what an exceptionally versatile and culturally mobile text this was and still is, I think. And this morning's discussions have proved that, I think, as well. And we also have continue to have a very international assortment of speakers, so I think our discussion should also reflect that interculturality to a certain extent. So despite its political topicality and to some extent even radicality, as we've seen, Utopia was easily able to straddle national, linguistic, cultural borders and to adapt itself to an astonishing variety of political, religious, literary environments. And my impression that I have from the early 17th century adaptations is that the shape and the generic affiliations of the vernacular utopias perhaps became increasingly diverse, and it seems to me that it was during that period that the book's increasing association with travel fiction and satire, and perhaps with fiction in general, became a dominant key to its reception, and that it was perhaps also during this period that that Utopia's gradual perception as the founding text of a new literary genre emerged. This is my personal take. Perhaps we can discuss these questions later. But let me now introduce our first speaker. Inmaculada Urena Asensio has traveled here from Spain. She's a very young colleague. She's just finished her BA in English Studies at the Universidad de Jaén. She also studied for a year at Northumbrian University, where she did an Erasmus year in English Studies and Film Studies, I gathered. And today's paper is a continuation, or has emerged from her BA thesis, which was entitled The Spanish Translation of Thomas More's Utopia by Jerónimo de Medinilla in 1637, a descriptive study of its paratexts. And today she's going to speak to us on this translation, and she'll expand on the political and social context that made it possible. So please give a very warm welcome to
Well, thank you, Gabriela, for your presentation. And also, I would like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be here. And also to be able to share my little contribution to this work of Thomas More. As he explained, I prepared my BA final dissertation on the paratext of the Spanish translation by Jerónimo de Medinilla, made of Utopia, because I thought they were a very useful source of information about the work, Utopia itself, and also its historical and cultural context of Spain in the 17th century. Also, they were a good source of information as well for how Thomas More was perceived or considered by that time. Now I'm going to deal with the whole work. Also, I believe that it is quite interesting for study and also for the understanding of which work was the relationship of Thomas More with Spain of the 17th century. Before starting with the work itself, I would like to make a brief contextualization of the country in the first half of the 17th century. Spain was under the rule of Philip IV, and by the time Utopia was published, the king was Charles V, and it is a century over Utopia was published. What we find is that Spain is suffering an economic crisis that was due to the internal and external wars inside the country, and also the political and economical instability that were suffering the American territories. Therefore, in this situation where the Spanish Empire was no longer as powerful as it was a century before, we find that artists started to use art as a way of protesting against corruption and also the governance. This political crisis, we can say, that came into a flourishing artistic stage, which is, as you might know, the Siglo de Oro. In the Siglo de Oro we find playwriters such as Lope de Vega, painters as Diego de Velázquez, poets such as Francisco de Quevedo or Luis de Góngora. So now in this panorama where the Spanish population did not trust as well the government, art started flowing, and Jerónimo de Medinilla decided to publish the first translation not up to that time. This Spanish translation was called La Utopía de Tomás More. It was published in Córdoba, a city in the south of Spain, in the year, as I said, 1637. And the workshop of publishing was the one by Salvador de Cea, who was a very well-known printer in this Andalusian city. In order to understand why this publication might have been done in Córdoba, I think it would be useful to provide you with a brief or quite a long biography of the author. The author is Jerónimo de Medinilla y Porres, who was born in a little village in the north of Spain. He was born in a noble family in 1590, and he died more or less around the year 1650. According to some genealogical documents, he was judge, as well as his father was. And another fact that shared in common with his father was that they both belonged to the Order of Santiago. This might be relevant because many characters appearing in the pratext also belong to this same order, like Bartolomé Jiménez Platón, or even the person to whom the work is dedicated, who is Juan de Chávez. It was difficult to build a biography because there were no compilation of his life and all the events that occurred during his lifetime. But thanks to some references, to some textual references, we can get some important facts. And the main one is the one by, so there are some letters by Quevedo, the famous playwright, not playwright, but artist, and also Sancho de Sandoval, who was a courtier from the south of Spain. And those letters were written between 1635 and 1637, and these letters somehow tells which were his responsibilities in Castile by the time the translation might have been produced, or while Medinilla was working on. I have to highlight one specific letter which Quevedo wrote to Florencia de Vera, who was vicario in a famous village called Villanueva de los Infantes. And in this letter, he mentions that he didn't agree with Medinilla in his ideas because Quevedo supported or liked to read Bocadini, and Medinilla preferred to read Nicolas Machiavelli, and therefore he somehow criticizes him and also seizes the opportunity to tell Florencia de Vera, who was the addressee, that he had pulled the string to name him Corregidor of Coro, who was an important position in the city. So he didn't look at Medinilla with good eyes, I say. For the study of his letters, it would have been interesting to study also the letters written by Sanchez Sandoval, so we could have acquired more knowledge about him, and also to get a different alternative or a different perspective of this character, but it wasn't possible. Apart from these references found in the letters of Quevedo, we find that Medinilla was mentioned in a miscellaneous work published by Juan Pérez de Montalbán. This work is called Para Todos, and it was published in 1632. This work presents the reader with a wide range of texts like comedies, fables, philosophical statements, or even brief drama performances. By the end of this book, we find a long list of distinguished characters that might have lived in the city of Madrid, and we find that Medinilla is here. What caught our attention is that Medinilla appears in this list, despite the fact that we haven't found any mention to Madrid in any of his works, in his and also it is interesting to find that this work was published in 1632 and the translation didn't appear until 1637. So what was Medinilla doing to be here? Somehow connected with this reference, we find that Medinilla was also mentioned in the humanist work Biblioteca Hispánica Nova by Nicolas Antonio from 1672. This encyclopedia gathers information about those people who Nicolas Antonio thought that were important to the growth of the Spanish literary panorama. And there is again Medinilla. Medinilla has also been attributed a lost translation of a work by Jean Baudin, Methodus ad Facilem Historianum Cognitionem. But this is still a lost translation. Finally, another mention to the author is that he had a really good relationship, like a master and pupil relationship with Bartolomé Jiménez Platón, who was a humanist and scholar who was an influential figure in thought and also different cultural disciplines. We might say that this humanist, together with another one called Ballesteros y Saavedra, used to have an intellectual circle in the area of Castile, and Medinilla was included within. As a curiosity, we can say that Jiménez Platón dedicated his work Eloquentiae Romanae from 1638, and maybe just because it would have been useful for him to improve his oral skills and to develop a good eloquence, because he was kind of a politician in Córdoba. So now that we know a little bit more about the author, I'm going to explain the work itself. We can divide it into two main sections: its paratext and the translation itself. This paratext conforms like a formal prologue. There are 12 different documents, like praises, acknowledgements, official approvals, testimonials, and all of them somehow fulfills a function. I've used generic definition on paratext, which is that they are a series of external elements that try to mediate between the work of publishing and the work of the text to analyze those paratexts. And in fact, thanks to those, we readers can have a connection with the author himself, with Medinilla, and also the historical and the literary context of the translation. These paratexts were written by the author himself. We find 2 notes of the author. There is also another recommendation by Quevedo. There are 2 documents like official approval on behalf of the Inquisition by Bartolomé Jiménez Patón, also a recommendation of Jiménez Patón himself. We also find a long list of lyrical praises to the author made by different people working on Córdoba who had a political position in the city. And well, from my point of view, I would like to highlight 2 of them. One of them is the author's note on the translation of chapter 9 of Utopia. I believe it is important because there is no other comment on any other chapter of Utopia, just this one. The reason might be because it deals with religion. By the time Medinilla published his translation, La Utopía de Tomás Moro, in Spain, the Inquisition still had power there. And we find that in an index of forbidden books published by the end of the 16th century, some quotes of Tomás Moro's Utopia were included. But these quotes were from book 1, not from book 2. So Medinilla tries to justify why he had chosen to make this note, because he declares himself a Catholic. Also, he values the figure of Tomás Moro, and therefore he uses some quotes from great canonical texts, such as St. Paul's text or the Songs of Songs. He wanted to avoid a disapproval by the Inquisition. Another important practice I would like to highlight, because I believe it is the most enriching, is the one by Quevedo, in which he explains his own thought of Tomás Moro, what he thought about the Englishmen, and also his own theory with Boccarini and the medieval texts, and as well he also includes his own opinion or his relationship with Medinilla. Now, on the other hand, I'm going to talk about the translation. The first thing I have to mention is that this translation is just of book 2. We can't find any reference why he just chose book 2 and why it is not book 1. The scholar López Estrada suggests that maybe Medinilla preferred just to go straight to the moral proposals of Utopia and leave aside the tedious translation of a dialogue. Maybe another reason might have been the presence of the Inquisition, as there were many quotes forbidden from book 1, and also because the Inquisition thought that this first book had like a Erasmian spirit. The translation, although the translator himself describes it as a paraphrased one, we find it is a word-for-word translation, and he uses a direct style, as if it were a translation exercise, maybe the one he used to practice with human pattern. The essential message is again preserved throughout the work, and if we had to make any note, it would be from chapter 9, where we see some inconsistency in translation, like some words are translated in a different way, or some sentences not try to preserve the same message, like he tries to hide his own interpretation. Also, moving back to why the translation is just from book 2, another scholar mentioned that maybe during the humanists from the 17th century might thought utopia was a critique of the England of the 16th century, so people from the 17th century might not be able to understand it properly, like it is a work that is decontextualized. Also, there could be people thinking that it is just a fictional work, so why shall we study this work? There is also debate on which might have been the source text used by Medinilla, as there isn't any reference within the text. But the title page itself says that it is a translation from a Latin source. It could be possible that the courtier had access to a copy owned by Quevedo. Quevedo owned a copy of the 1548 Leuven edition. And we also know that Quevedo had one of his copies was annotated by himself. Book 1 was annotated. Quevedo wrote Carta a Luis XIII, letter to Luis XIII, which was written in 1637. And in this one, he makes some references to utopia. So that could be the source used by Medinilla. There are many things that are unclear with this work, but we can take Quevedo's justification of why Medinilla made the translation, and this that he himself encouraged him to do it. Also, Medinilla explains that his desire is to make this translation in order to approach it to people, so Spanish people could have access to a Spanish version of Utopia. But we don't know why. Maybe it was because what I mean is that we don't know why there wasn't any translation up to 1637, because it's been a century. Maybe the reasons were the Inquisition, or also there are scholars who mention the relationship between Spain and England. That is, the Spanish translation was published in 1637, but for instance, in English it was done in 1551, as Gabriela mentioned in her paper. The German one was done in 1524, or the French one was also made in the first half of the 16th century. We even find a biography made by Fernando de Vera from 1591, so why there wasn't a translation before on time. Nevertheless, I would like to mention that López Estrada mentions in one of his works that there is a manuscript in the Royal Library in Madrid that was owned by the Count of Gondomar, who was a character who was in charge of the diplomatic affairs of the region and was said to keep contact with the descendant of Thomas More. He lived by the end of the 16th century. But this copy is anonymous, it is not edited, but it is a treasure because it is the full we can find a full translation, book 1 and also book 2. Regarding the reception of the work, we find a second edition published in Madrid in 1790. This work introduces a significant formal structure because some of the preliminaries were removed, maybe because some of the names mentioned were not familiar for the readers in this 18th century, or maybe because the protocol of publishing was completely different in the 17th century. But what it is also remarkable is that this edition includes a summarized biography of Thomas More that was extracted from Pedro de Rivadeneyra's Historia Eclesiástica del Cisma del Reino de Inglaterra from 1518. Also, we will find a third edition of La Utopía de Thomas More. It was reprinted in Spain in 1805, and it is actually a revisited version of the former edition. As a conclusion, this work, I might say, it's an echo of Medinilla's attitude to help and teach people, but also Quevedo's himself. As well as Thomas More's desire was to improve nations and remove corruption, they also wanted to teach and to let the government know what they should do to prevent the excesses of power. This works, although there are many doubts around it, we don't know why the delay of the translation, or we don't know why it is just book 2. Triggers a really interesting way or path to study in the future of Thomas More and Spain. And in the future, I would like to keep on researching on this work, and well, I hope you